Good evening and welcome to another prayer meeting with Cottondale. My name's Chad, and tonight we're going to take a look at a passage from the book of Isaiah. We sometimes we can tend to avoid the prophets. They can be very difficult. The Old Testament prophets, they can be very difficult to interpret, and I certainly don't pretend to have it all figured out. But I think the passage we're going to talk about tonight has some beautiful truths in them that will help us. Particularly, there's some powerful promises, including one of my absolute favorite verses in the Bible, where God tells us to not be afraid because He's going to help us. And seems to me this is it's always true in some degree, but in our church family at the moment, and maybe in your circles as well, just seems to be just an unusual amount of heartache and sorrow and fear. And so hopefully this will be a blessing to us this evening. So we're going to jump right into our passage. It says, let me, one second here. Okay. All right. It says, "Listen to me in silence, O coastlands. Let the peoples renew their strength. Let them approach, then let them speak. Let us together draw near for judgment. Who stirred up one from the east, whom victory meets at every step? He gives up nations before him, so that he tramples kings underfoot. He makes them like dust with his sword, like driven stubble with his bow. He pursues them and passes on safely, by paths his feet have not trod. Who has performed and done this, calling the generations from the beginning? I, the Lord, the first, and with the last, I am he. The coastlands have seen and are afraid. The ends of the earth tremble. They have drawn near and come. Everyone helps his neighbor and says to his brother, be strong. The craftsman strengthens the goldsmith, and he who smooths with the hammer, him who strikes the anvil, saying of the soldering, it is good. And they strengthen it with nails so that it cannot be moved." So, what does this mean? Well, I'm just going to try to draw out some truths from us that I believe are applicable. So, this is Isaiah chapter 41, I believe it was. Let's see. Yes, Isaiah chapter 41. Okay, so the book of Isaiah is largely centered around judgment, honestly, and many scholars note that there's kind of like a big transition that takes place around chapter 40. There's kind of a narrative portion that precedes that, but then before that, Isaiah seems to be dealing largely with the judgment of the northern kingdom of Israel from Assyria, and I think it was 726 BC. Is that right? The Assyrians conquered the northern kingdom of Israel. But then the latter part of the book seems to focus on the judgment of Judah from the nation of Babylon, and then its future restoration. So you remember that the northern kingdom of Israel went into idolatry very quickly after the kingdom was divided during Solomon's day. It was divided from Israel in the north and Judah in the south, okay? And they pretty much embraced idolatry immediately and perpetually. And God, through the nation of Assyria, judged the northern kingdom of Israel, and they were destroyed and exiled. Okay. Well, Judah lasted longer. Judah was the southern kingdom, and the kings of Judah were all descendants of David, heirs to the throne of David, and a number of them, a decent number of them, remained faithful to the Lord for the most part, and that extended their days until, however, even the kingdom of Judah became evil and wicked and rebellious against the Lord, to the point where the Lord also judged the southern kingdom of Judah with the nation of Babylon under King Nebuchadnezzar. And in 586 BC, Jerusalem was destroyed and Judah was exiled into Babylon. Okay, and so Isaiah in the latter part of the book seems to be kind of looking forward to that, and also anticipating the return. So not just the judgment, but Isaiah often, at many points, is speaking about the return, the restoration from exile. And we're going to get to that in a little bit. But it says, who stirred up one from the east whom victory meets at every step? So, there's a good chance this is referring to Nebuchadnezzar. He's from the east. Babylon was east of Israel. Okay, and it says, who stirred one up whom victory meets at every step? Well, God is saying, I am the one who's raising up Babylon. Okay? So God uses nations to judge other nations. And so what might seem from an outside perspective as just one nation trying to conquer another nation and become dominant, from a human perspective, that's what was taking place. But from a biblical perspective, God was using the nation of Babylon to judge Israel for their rebellion against him and their breaking of his covenant. And so the question is kind of, rhetorical. Who stirred them up? Well, God did. God stirred up this nation from the east who has victory at every step. He gives up nations before him, so that he tramples kings underfoot. He makes them like dust with his sword, like driven stubble with his bow. So God is the one saying, God is telling the people of Israel, I'm the one who's doing this. It's not just Babylon, it's not just Nebuchadnezzar. I'm the one who's doing this as a result of you breaking my covenant and as punishment for sin. He pursues them, passes on safely. Again, this is all just reference to Babylon's success in battle that God says is ultimately from the Lord. Who has performed this? Who has done this? Calling the generations from the beginning. I, the Lord, the first, and with the last, I am he. It's me. I'm the one that's doing this, God says. I'm the one that's doing this. The coastlands have seen and are afraid. The ends of the earth tremble. They've drawn near and come. So everyone's afraid of Babylon. Everyone helps his neighbor, says to his brother, be strong. The craftsman strengthens the goldsmith, and he who smooths with the hammer, him who strikes the anvil, saying of the soldering, it is good. And they strengthen it with nails so that it cannot be moved. I'm not 100% sure what this part means, to be honest. I don't know if the craftsman is talking about I don't know if it's talking about people making weapons to strengthen themselves, or this is just a thought. Now, I'm not sure, but it's possible that when it talks about the goldsmith there and smoothing with the hammer and saying and strengthening it with nails so that it cannot be moved, the idea of kind of made of gold and something that cannot move is often associated with an idol, these Old Testament idols. Okay, and so I might be wrong about this, but he's saying to his neighbor, be strong. So maybe what is taking place here then is that the people who hear about Nebuchadnezzar coming, they are trying to strengthen themselves by trusting in their idols. And so we know that this was a common practice, right? They created these lifeless idols that God often critiques. That's a common theme in the book of Isaiah, is that God distinguishes himself from these carved images, these little figurines, these idols that people worshipped as gods, and he almost kind of makes fun of them. They make it with their hands, they carve the wood, they cover it with gold with their own two hands, and then they bow down to it and worship it. It's absurd. Well, the reason that sounds absurd to us is because we have inherited a Christian worldview, and that's why it sounds crazy to us. But at that time, it wasn't crazy. That's what they did. That's how they worshipped, and it made sense to them, even though it doesn't make sense to us. So they were trusting in their idols, thinking, "Well, God, my God's going to deliver me from this," and God is saying, "Well, no, it's I'm the one who's using Babylon to judge." And so your little idol's not going to save you. And so the takeaway from this is that God is serious about sin, and God is sovereign, and God rules over the nations. And so nation conquering nation isn't just a political ordeal. It's a sovereign, it's an occurrence that is being brought about by God himself for God's purposes. And God judges nations, and he'll judge other nations, and he'll judge America, and he'll judge any other nation that he wants to judge for their sin and their iniquity. And our only hope is not to trust in idols. If we trust in idols, it's over. If we put our hope in anything else, we've lost. But if we put our hope in God, he alone can deliver us, because he's the one who's working. He's the one who's in control, right? And so some prayer points from this. Thank God that he's sovereign. Praise him that he rules over the nations and over the tiniest details of our lives. This is just so amazing to me. The same God who rules over the nations, who lifts up and throws down nations, is the same God who Jesus said, not a sparrow falls to the ground without your Father's doing. Every hair on your head is numbered, right? And so that means that the sovereign God of the universe cares about the tiniest details of your life. I say that because I want that to be a comfort to us. I hope it's a comfort to you. Maybe you're going through something right now, and it's on the one hand, it may seem way too big for you to handle, and pretty much everything is, okay? And on the other hand, in the big scheme of things, it might seem, okay, this is so small. Why would God care about this? But the truth is the sovereign God who's in control of everything also cares about the tiniest details of your life. So maybe you're just going through something, struggling with something right now. Your heart is heavy with something. I just want to say, God is sovereign. God is in control even over that tiniest issue in your life. And he hears, and he cares, and he knows. And so thank him and look to him during this season, because he cares and he's in control. And the next is reflect on any idols that you may be trusting in besides God. This is always very tempting. It's very subtle. It's very dangerous. I feel it. I'm sure you feel it. This temptation to look to other things to help us rather than looking to God. And so let this be a reminder to us this evening, and just say, God, you're our help. You're our strength. We look to other things, but we should look to God first and foremost. And so whatever it is that you're going through, don't trust in this or that to fix the problem. Trust in God. Lean on God. And maybe just tonight you can spend some time just casting yourself at his feet and at his mercy, asking him for help and deliverance. And he will. He'll help his people. He will. Might be in his time and in his way, but if you trust him and you look to him, he'll do what's right. And you can bank on that. And so I hope this will be a blessing to you. Take some time and just spend it with the Lord. Or pray through these things and join back with me when you're done. All right, we're going to look at another passage here. Okay. Next part here, it says, "But you, Israel, my servant Jacob, whom I have chosen, the offspring of Abraham, my friend, you who I took from the ends of the earth and called from its farthest corners, saying, you are my servant, I have chosen you and not cast you off. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Behold, all who are incensed against you shall be put to shame and confounded. Those who strive against you shall be as nothing and perish. You shall seek those who contend with you, but you shall not find them. Those who war against you shall be as nothing at all. For I, the Lord your God, hold your right hand. It is I who say to you, fear not. I am the one who helps you. Fear not, you worm Jacob, you men of Israel. I am the one who helps you, declares the Lord. Your Redeemer is the Holy One of Israel. Behold, I make of you a threshing sledge, new, sharp, and having teeth. You shall thresh the mountains and crush them, and you shall make the hills like chaff. You shall winnow them, and the wind shall carry them away, and the tempest shall scatter them. And you shall rejoice in the Lord, in the Holy One of Israel you shall glory. Okay, so let's jump back here. So everyone's afraid. Everyone's afraid of Babylon. They're trusting in their idols. But God says to Israel, but you, Israel, my servant Jacob, whom I have chosen, the offspring of Abraham, my friend. Isn't that amazing? Abraham was a friend of God. Israel is God's chosen, was God's chosen nation, God's chosen people. They were the vehicle through which he brought his salvation to the world. Ultimately in Jesus Christ, who himself was a Jew, a descendant of Abraham, a descendant of David, the heir to the throne of Israel and the king of the kingdom of God. This is the Israel that he is talking to. He chose Abraham. He chose his offspring. He took him from the ends of the earth, from its farthest corners. He called him his servant. I've chosen you and not cast you off. And so this kind of picture that we see develops through the latter part of the book of Isaiah is that despite Israel's rebellion, despite Israel's rejection of God, and even though God would judge Israel through the nation of Babylon, this theme that begins to develop is that despite all that, after all that takes place, God's still going to have mercy on them. God's going to restore them from the exile. And this restoration of the exile, this restoration of the nation of Israel from exile, kind of gets picked up as this grand theme that is kind of understood to be brought about ultimately by the Messiah, by the true King of Israel, who would bring about the ultimate restoration of Israel from their exile. Because even when they returned from Babylon, in those later years, they were subjugated by the Greeks, and then there was a very short period of kind of liberation as a Jewish nation, but then that didn't last very long because then the Romans came along, and by the time Jesus comes, they're under subjugation by the Romans. And so even though they're in the land of Israel, there's still this understanding among many that the Israel is still an exiled nation because they're not free servants of God. And so there's still kind of this sense that Israel is looking for its restoration. And of course, Jesus is the one to bring about that, but in a way different than they anticipated and expected, right? But the point here is that God, despite their sin, despite their rebellion, God would remain continually faithful to them because he chose them. That's a powerful testimony to the faithfulness of God. And then we get to verse 10, which to me is one of my favorite verses in the Bible. It's one of the most powerful verses in the Bible. I strongly encourage you to memorize this verse. So maybe even take a moment, get a pencil, write this verse down, stick it in your Bible, stick it in something that you'll see every day, write it down in a couple places, stick it on your refrigerator. Memorize this verse because to me it's one of the most powerful verses in the Bible. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. This is amazing. And it's so powerful because it's God speaking directly to us, directly to his people. Don't be afraid. Why? Because God is with us. That's why you shouldn't be afraid. It doesn't mean we shouldn't. God doesn't say, don't be afraid. Your circumstances aren't that bad. That's not what he's saying, right? Your circumstances could be really bad. That's not why you shouldn't be afraid. You shouldn't be afraid because your circumstances aren't bad. You shouldn't be afraid because God is with you in your circumstances, and he's greater than your circumstances. He's greater than your situation. He's greater than your very frightening situation that you might be in, or your very difficult situation. Don't be afraid. Why? Because God is with you. Don't be dismayed. Why? Because I am your God, right? I mean, God is God. I mean, there's no one like him. There's, it's if you're going through a hard time and I say, hey, I'm with you. I'm right here with you. I'm walking through this with you. That can give you a little bit of comfort, right? Because I mean that's comforting when somebody shares that with you. But the truth is, even though that gives you a little bit of comfort, I can't really do a lot most of the time to help very difficult situations. I'm just another human being. So if I'm with you and that gives you a little bit of comfort, well, God being with you is something totally different, right? Don't be afraid because I am with you. Fear not because I am your God. I'm just Chad, but God is God. So it's one thing for Chad to be with you, okay, or anyone, a friend, a family member to be with you. That's great. But if God is with you, that's different. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. God will hold us up in whatever we're going through. He will, because he's our God. He's not just any God. He's our God. If you have repented of your sins and believed in Jesus, he's not just out there God. He is your God. Your God. And he will hold you up with his righteous right hand. Memorize this verse. Cling to it. Pray it. Thank God for it. Let it be your song in times of difficulty. Because it's such beautiful truth. He will uphold you. He will uphold you. Whatever you're going through right now, don't be afraid, because your God is with you. And he will uphold you with his righteous right hand. Again, in this case, he's talking about the enemies. He says that they will be confounded against you. You'll seek them, but shall not find them. That's classic biblical Hebrew language about your enemies disappearing. God making your those things that would harm you flee from before you. Okay. For I, the Lord your God, hold your right hand. It is I who say to you, fear not. I am the one who helps you. So again, there's this continual emphasis on what? It is I who say to you, fear not. I am the one. So in other words, it's the key part, the key thing that makes this significant is who God is. Because of who God is, it matters that he's with us. Because God is all-powerful. Because God is all-knowing, because God is all-wise, because God can do whatever he wants, and nothing and no one challenges his will. Not even your circumstances, not presidents, prime ministers, kings, nations. No one can challenge God because of who God is. That's why it's significant that he is with you. It is I who say to you, fear not. I am the one who helps you. If God is the one who helps you, or as the Apostle Paul said it in Romans chapter 8, if God is for us, who can be against us? And interestingly here, look at this. He says, fear not, you worm, Jacob. How about that? Oh, you got to love that. Jacob has not been faithful to God, but guess what? God's still going to help him. That's grace right there. That's grace right there. Okay, so let's jump to our prayer points here. Thank God that you belong to him. Remember, he's not just any God. If you belong to Jesus, he's your God. Your God. Thank God that you belong to him. Commit Isaiah 41:10 to memory. Claim its promises regularly. Go ahead and take some time. Repeat it over and over. Commit it to memory. It's one of the most powerful promises in the Bible. And next, pray that your God would help you in your struggle. Maybe you're going through something right now. Pray this promise to God. He is the one who helps you. Maybe you know some other people who are going through an unusually difficult situation right now. There's some people in our church right now that are doing that, having some serious difficulties in their life. Pray for them. Maybe give them a call or text of encouragement. Maybe even share this passage of scripture with them if you feel like that's appropriate. It's such a beautiful promise, and we just have the privilege of praying this over other people. And so whether you're going through something or somebody you know is going through something, pray for them. Let this be an opportunity to bless them with your prayers and with your words of encouragement. So go ahead and work through these things and pick back up with me when you're done. All right, we're going to look at some final verses here. It says, when the poor and needy seek water, and there is none, and their tongue is parched with thirst, I, the Lord, will answer them. I, the God of Israel, will not forsake them. I will open rivers on the bare heights, and fountains in the midst of the valleys. I will make the wilderness a pool of water, and the dry land springs of water. I will put in the wilderness the cedar, the acacia, the myrtle, and the olive. I will set in the desert the cypress, the plane, and the pine together, that they may see and know, may consider and understand together that the hand of the Lord has done this. The Holy One of Israel has created it. So I think our takeaway from this passage here is again this theme that I mentioned earlier about restoration. Okay, God, despite the fact that God was going to use Babylon to judge them for their sin, as he told them that he would do if they broke his covenant in the book of Deuteronomy, right? He said that he would still have in the latter days, he would have mercy on them. He would restore them from judgment. He would restore them from exile. And this is the language that is used in Isaiah concerning the restoration from exile. It's this language, it's this kind of eschatological, that means kind of like end times, kind of poetic language about restoration, okay? About providing water to the thirsty, okay? He's going to answer them. He will not forsake them. He's talking about his people. He's not going to forsake them. At the appropriate time, he's going to restore them from the judgment that he judges them with. He's going to have mercy on them afresh. He's going to give water to the thirsty. He's going to open up rivers in the bare heights, fountains in the valleys. It's just this big picturesque imagery of God restoring the dry places, making them fresh and vibrant, full of life. Remember what Jesus said? I'm living water, right? I will give you living water, right? I'll make in the wilderness pools of water, dry land, in the dry land springs of water. I'll put the wilderness in the wilderness cedar, acacia, myrtle, and olive, set in the desert cypress, plane. Well, that means what he's going to do. He's going to change the desert. The desert will no longer be a desert anymore. And so again, it's this powerful imagery of a dry, thirsty land and people under the heat of judgment. And yet he's going to restore them. He's going to make again their situation, if you will, green and lush and vibrant. He's going to restore them because he's going to have mercy on them again. Why does God do this? That they may see and know, may consider and understand together that the hand of the Lord has done this. The Holy One of Israel has created it. Now look at that created. That language of created, it's hard not to see this as a reference to the new creation. That one day all the old will pass away and the new will come. So this promise will ultimately be fulfilled in the new creation, the ultimate restoration from exile, if you will, of the people of God will be in the ultimate restoration of the world will be in the new creation, the final age, the new heavens and the new earth where sin is eradicated because God had judged it all and punished it all, and all who believed in him have been raised from the dead and given new bodies, incapable of sin, and we will live forever and reign with him eternally in a new creation. Okay? But it doesn't come all at once. Many scholars understand that Jesus came and he what they call inaugurated the new creation. He brought it in seed form. The kingdom of God is kind of like the new creation. and he brought it in seed form, and it's growing, because whoever believes in Christ is what? Is a new creature, the Bible says. So the new creation is invading the world, but one day Jesus is going to cataclysmically come and bring it in fully. We see it now in part, in lives saved and changed by the gospel, but we'll see it fully when sin is fully removed from the world forever in the new creation. But why does God do this? That they may see and know that the hand of the Lord has done this. Everything God will do, even have mercy once again upon a rebellious people, and forgive them and restore them in an unbelievable way. He will do this all so that, why? So that people will know that God is God, that he is the Lord, that the Holy One of Israel has done this. God will get the glory for everything that he does in both salvation and in judgment. So how can we pray about this? The Lord will satisfy the longings of his people. Thank him for that. If you're crying out, thirsty, in this world, life is hard, it's difficult, but you can take heart that it will not always be this way. It might not necessarily get easier in this life. We're not promised that, but you can rest assured no suffering will compare, as Paul said, to the glory that will be revealed to us. And so it won't always be this way. The longings of our heart will be one day satisfied beyond our greatest imagination in Jesus Christ. Believe that, bank on it, trust it, cling to that promise. Meditate on that this evening if you're really struggling, and God will help you. Next, pray for God's restoration. We need it in every area of our life. There's areas of your life that need to be restored from sin. There's areas in other people's lives, friends, family members, church members, community members, that needs God's restoring work, and our world needs God's mercy right now. Pray for God's restoration. That's what we pray for when we pray the Lord's Prayer. Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. That's the first great longing. Hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Your will be done. So go ahead and pray through these things and pick back up with me when you're done. All right. I hope you had an encouraging evening tonight, praying through this powerful scripture. I really hope you'll commit Isaiah 41:10 to memory. It's just a powerful, powerful verse. I hope it will be an encouragement and blessing to you in difficult times, which we all go through. And don't forget, maybe send a word of encouragement. Just let them know that you're praying for them or something like that to somebody struggling this evening. This would be a great opportunity to do that. I hope you're having a good week. If there's anything we can do for you, please let us know. And we will see you this Sunday as we worship King Jesus. Hope to see you then. God bless you.